Everyone to our Oakdale Tree Board meeting. We have a full agenda today. We'll go ahead and I'd like to call this meeting to order. First, we'll start with roll. And I'm Marge Sagstetter. I'm filling in tonight for Nick Cantola, our president, who can't be here. I'm Marge Sagstetter, as I mentioned, and we'll go ahead and go down the list. Glenn Giacoletto.
Acting Chair, I can take care of that for you.
Okay,
So, Commissioner Pearson,
Present.
thank you.
Commissioner Giacoletto, Commissioner Kittle, Acting Chair Sagstetter,
Here.
Commissioner Bender,
Present.
Commissioner Sorella,
Here.
Chair Cantola. Okay, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. The agenda has been preset. I'd like to get a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as presented. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's go ahead then. Approval of the minutes from our January 21st, 2025 regular meeting. Has everyone had a chance to take a look and review the minutes? And are there any comments?
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Decline? No? Okay. The motion passed, accept those meeting minutes. Thank you. All right, open forum is next on our agenda. That's usually a time when we can ask anyone in the audience or any of our board members to speak up and talk about anything, hot topics about trees.
That's not on the agenda.
That's not on the agenda. Thank you. Actually, I have one thing, if nobody else does. Anyone from the audience want to speak? All right. I just want to let everybody know that ARP is offering a class again at the Discovery Center on October 3rd from 1 to 3, AARP. And it's on prairie plants, and I'm not sure the exact topic, but mark your calendar if you're interested. It's a free class. We had one last year. Mike Bender and I hosted a little tree trek after the class, and this time we'll go out to the prairie and take a look. So anyway, just that's something coming up, not specific to trees, but of course there are trees in the prairie. So thank you. Anything else in the open forum? All right, well, that's good.
You have to close the forum.
Oh, I do have to close it. Can I have a motion to close the forum?
You just gavel it closed. That's it.
Thank you, walking me through this tonight. All right, tree board review. We have old and new business. Old business is first, our 2025 work plan, which has been presented in January. The draft was presented to the council in our work meeting. Let's see, it's quite a ways in here. So it includes our three basic community events, and then public education and awareness efforts that we're trying to make sure people know what's going on about trees in the community. We need to get an approval for this, I believe, a formal approval. So can I get a motion to present this as planned to the council?
You may want to ask first if staff has any comments on.
Oh, any comments from the staff on that?
Yeah, thank you, Acting Chair. There is none from staff. Just as a reminder, this is the same plan that the commission reviewed on the January 21st meeting. It was then submitted to council. Council reviewed at the February 25th meeting and had no recommendations or requests for changes, so seeking just approval to adopt as presented.
All right, thanks, Corey. All right, then we need a motion to adopt this as written.
I move we accept the 2025 tree board work plan as presented.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Mike. I know it's a slim pickings. All right, motions is approved. Thank you. On to new business. We're chugging along. So there's a new Chapter 22, Article 6, Disease Control and Tree Trimming that we want to talk about. This was sent to board members ahead of the meeting. It's a little lengthy, but could we maybe get some background on this?
Yeah, Acting
From
Chair,
staff?
I can take that, certainly. So throughout conversations with city staff and, the ongoing presence of Emerald Ash Borer developing throughout the city and especially in private properties, we, as staff, brought this forward through the administrator for seeking just some clarification and review to our city council as the ones that set that direction on how do we, the appropriate steps to take in responding to emerald ash borer trees or infected trees, which per our code constitutes a nuisance tree on private property, recognizing that there can be some pretty significant cost to that. And, as code states currently, which we'll get to on how we are doing it now compared to the way other communities are doing it. So I'll briefly run through the memo here, won't read it word for word, but just reminding the commission that we're just looking for feedback for council consideration that we can take forward to them. They specifically requested that the tree board review provide some input and guidance from them from your perspective. But as mentioned on the thing, ongoing efforts, with the urban forest and the increasing amount of emerald ash borer into trees. There's 4 property owners that there is an opportunity, depending on the quantity, the location of where those trees are, that it can have some pretty high consequences for financial constraints to different individuals. That's one aspect of it. As it states on our current city code, is that our forester, Mr. Melhorn, could do an inspection on a property. If he felt that there was a nuisance tree on the property, he would submit that information to the council. If the council agreed with that, we would at that point then send a letter to the property owner. And from the date of that property or that notice, they would have 20 days to remove that tree. If they chose to not or did not meet it in that deadline, then the city would abate that tree. We would coordinate likely with a contractor to do that removal, and then the invoice and all related costs would be sent to the parcel owner, property owner, not tenant, the property owner of that thing. If they failed to pay within 30 days, then we could special assessment under Minnesota statutes, which is alignment with what we do for special assessments for road construction projects and stuff like that. So related to, in preparation with that, recognizing council also had some questions related to what the cost for abatement was for different things. Our forester Melhorn did some research on it, and there is some estimates for abatement expenses. So as you can see in the thing, in a tree in the backyard that does have some obstacles, with approximately a 22-inch DBH, if we did a full removal, stump, restoration, and everything, it's about $3,200 per tree. Obviously, with the front yard, there's some differences there. The cost is a little bit less, and then depending on the diameter of that tree. But it's meant to give the commission, and it'll ultimately be provided to the council, just some underlying estimates of what that cost could be to a property owner if required to remove that. Looking around to some different communities, or city forester and myself did some research and just collaborated some things together. Ultimately, briefly going through what you'll see here through all these, there's a pattern that's very similar. City of Stillwater, forester shall notify in writing. The property owner has up to 30 days to remove it per city code. If the city performs the work, that all those expenses will be transferred onto the property owner. If the property owner fails to pay those, then the same similar situation. Those abatement costs can be assessed to that parcel. And importantly, note that Stillwater City staff report that they only take action to remove the nuisance on private trees on a complaint basis. City of Roseville, not much different. The forester would notify if they do see a tree that needs to be abated, remind the property owner of the code. It requires 20 days after the date of the notice for those to be removed. One unique thing to Roseville is that they, within 5 days of receiving it, they can file an appeal that would ultimately go through their tree board and then city council, all within 21 days following the notice. Ultimately, if the property tree has to be abated by the city, that those costs, similar to the other communities, would be transferred to the property owner, paid within 30 days. Anything not paid within 30 days will be collected over through property assessment over a 5-year period on real estates. Similar to Stillwater and what you're going to find in other city staff report, that they only take action to remove the nuisance trees on a complaint basis. White Bear Lake, very similar. Abatement notices requiring 20 days following the notice received by the city. If the property owner fails to remove it, city will proceed with the removal and assess the cost against the said property. There is a little bit of a difference with the city of White Bear Lake and discretion to defer payments of a special assessment depending on if they meet a few different categories of age, depending on the abatement requirements of the city, and then also if it would create a hardship for the applicant. And as described in their code, a hardship is described as an owner whose household income does not exceed 80% of the most recent median household income data. So, but there again, similar to the other codes, the city of White Bear Lake has adopted this code. Staff do not take action against nuisance trees on private property. City of Eagan, as aligned with the other, city forester would notice that to the property owner. The next two will be fairly similar. That is a little bit unique thing where if they don't feel that there's an intimate threat to other trees surrounding that, and because of maybe dormancy, it's hard to tell what the actual living condition of that tree is. There is an ability to delay a further inspection until the growing season or the next upcoming growing season. If the same tree is still deemed to need to be removed, but not an imminent danger to the others, the city forester has latitude to identify a timeline that they can work with the property owner. It's not a specific set amount of days that they have to have it removed from. Differently, if that tree is infected or it ultimately becomes an imminent threat to surrounding trees, the city forester shall notify that property owner, and then they are subject to at least removal within 20 days of that receiving that notice. Very similar to the other ones, if the property owner fails to remove, city shall abate, and the property owner is responsible for reimbursing the city for those charges within 30 days of the invoice. Anything over 30 days shall be considered delinquent, late penalty, fee, and also potentially charged as a special assessment. City of Eagan staff report that they will inspect for infection in trees on a complaint basis only. They would try to work with the property owner to educate and encourage them to remove the nuisance independently. However, if the property owner fails to do that, then they would move forward with the action of the city code. And lastly, City of Woodbury, just adjoining to us, very similar to City of Eagan with non-intimate debt threats that they can be deferred for a reinspection outside of the dormancy season. Forester and property owner will outline a timeline of when that tree needs to be removed, depending on the situation. If they fail to remove it, the city will proceed in having that abated. And under their public improvement chapter, which is very similar to the special assessment stuff that we've already been talking about, if the danger of the tree is imminent to a threat to other trees surrounding the area, the property owner must be abated within a specified time. If they don't have anything that outlines a specific date, that would be just up to, from our understanding, that they work with the property owner to set that. One unique thing too, the City of Woodbury that they most recently did pass to help with recognizing that there can be some constraints with the expense related to trees is they have reallocated $500,000, earmarked $500,000 to be spent between 2025 and 2027. It's a one-time allocation, and a property owner could receive reimbursement or have a tax deferred assessment on that. Over the amount of the actual removal cost dictates the term of how long that assessment goes out. The higher they can go to, a property owner can have up to potentially $20,000. And so that's obviously the most extensive, and then with the less impactful cost would be at a lesser amount. But they have a fee schedule that they've worked out. But it's a one-time thing, just meant to help with that. And once it's first come, first served. So once the $500,000 has been expended, then they're deferring back to the property owners. Then just through the council, the recent council discussion through the workshop that we mentioned previously, again, council believes that enforcing the code of ordinance is essential. However, there's acknowledgement that modifying the code of ordinance could enhance public safety for numerous different things. Where this is your neighbor's property, it could be infrastructure that maybe those trees are around power lines or something that when they do go down from a storm could knock power out to different properties or anything because of a property owner didn't abate it. But initially, they've some of the discussion points that they've participated in, and also are looking for feedback and consideration from the tree board is the suitability of creating a repayment process similar to street assessments. They also are looking for some feedback or some consideration related to the removal after a property owner has been notified to abate. And so what's the timeline for that? Is the 20 days that is existing in our existing adopted code appropriate? Or should that be adjusted? And how the trees are identified? Are they complaint basis? Is it something that we want to, that the council should direct, where it's through part of a different form of the inspection process for a property if they're on another site or anything like that? But ultimately, in a nutshell, there was an awful lot there, but certainly happy to answer any additional questions or anything from that, but looking for feedback from you for council consideration.
I've got a question on the 20 days. With so much emerald ash borer going around, a lot of quote-unquote reputable tree removal people are busy. So would it be possible if you're notified by the city forester and you call up a tree company and they say, yeah, what we can get to you, but it'll be a month and a half. If they've got that on record, would that be acceptable, that they would bypass that 20 days then?
I think that, that's, I'm not here to answer that question. This is feedback that we're looking from you to provide.
Yeah.
If that's a suggestion that you would like to make towards the council to consider, we can note that.
I think there's got to be some leeway, because to get a reputable tree removal, I think most of them are pretty well booked up. I was just talking to somebody about Stillwater, and they were asking how Oakdale was doing with their emerald ash removal. And I said, it looks like they're doing okay. And they were mentioning Stillwater. They said Stillwater's got an awful lot of them that have been standing for a long time. So that means that, the reputable people are busy, so.
Yeah, certainly a valid point, and I think one that's in alignment to some questions that were raised by the council of what that appropriateness is for that.
I would have to concur because of my personal experience of having a tree fall, and it took me a couple of weeks to get someone to be able to come over, so 20 days might be a little tight, but if I can understand, certainly making arrangements within the 20 days.
That was going to be, and thank you for mentioning that, Commissioner. That was going to be a distinction question I was going to ask is, are you referencing the maintaining the 20 days requirement as adopted, but with supplemental documentation that you have a plan would be permitted to delay that removal?
Suffice for the 20 days.
Based on there. Okay.
So a written something in writing, a contract, or is that what you guys you're thinking?
Or at least be on the schedule,
Right.
being able to say I'm on the schedule.
Yeah, but you'd want evidence of that probably, right?
Yeah, I would think
city
that
would.
should
Yeah,
the council
because
decide that. would be-
even tree removals, they're subject to the weather too.
Yeah, point.
So,
I've got a question, perhaps a moot question, but is there a distinction between the city easement versus the private property owner's area?
Yes, if it's in city right-of-way or on city property, the city will remove it.
Okay, because that's not clear at all in any of the notes you've got in
Yep,
here.
these are meant to
Private
be
property.
specifically focused towards trees on private property.
Yeah, I'm not sure a lot of people know about the city easement issue, though, is the question.
Yeah, yes, and our forestry team has a real comfortable grasp on where we're at in our public spaces of what's left, especially, those that might be out in the public and, those, whether it's in a right-of-way or something like that, and are continue to actively triage those and address those, as appropriate, and we'll continue to do that. But this conversation here is more directly focused on trees on private property for a property owner that might not be aware that, what can happen with that tree or, how not removing it, what kind of safety concerns that could bring to maybe not them themselves, but, a neighbor or something, if you have a tree leaning over onto somebody else's property. Or it could be something in your front yard and an individual walking down the sidewalk on stuff like that. So that's really where my understanding is the basis of this. When we talk about nuisance trees, we're talking right now about emerald ash borer, but it covers a lot of other, species and diseases and stuff like that. But with the quantity of, EAB and trees succumbing to that disease, where does, at what point, as it's adopted, the city, our forester would go and could do an inspection and automatically notify council, could be required that that property owner removes that tree. And there's recognition of that importance that I think the council's asking for your input more related to are the terms of that, our current ordinance appropriate given the quantity that we're seeing in different areas, and whether that be the time and recognizing what some of these costs are, how could that be is, from your perspectives and your guys' knowledge base, where do you feel that that level of urgency should be, sticking tight to the 20 days and, recognizing that there could be some fiscal hardships if, there is some options for, that the council has discussed about, working through that special assessment process with some, how that looks, for repayment and that. But ultimately, anything related to this topic is, we'd appreciate that feedback, but specifically to trees on private property.
The only other comment I could have is my personal experience. I had an ash tree that I was having serviced and taken care of, and all of a sudden I woke up one morning and the tree had split in half. Half was on my neighbor's fence. Fortunately, it didn't go the other direction and take out my neighbor's shed. But it took me a while to find somebody that could come out and get it, so it was marginal if I would have been in the 20 days. But also, how do people know if the tree is going to be, I didn't know there was a problem with the tree. I was having it treated for emerald ash borer, and I thought everything was copacetic, but it was certainly not. Is there any facility to help people determine if some of these ash are in bad shape?
Yeah, certainly our city forester, Mr. Melhorn, is happy to, assist with inspection or reaffirming for property owners, just as it states in the code now that we, in determining whether a tree is diseased. Obviously, there is numerous other private entities that are well-versed in tree disease and in their overall health. So there's numerous options besides the city forester, but by any homeowner can call Public Works and set up an appointment with our forester to come out and have a consultation with them about it.
yeah, the way this is written right now, it's, they've got 20 days after they're notified by the city forester.
Correct.
So anything can go on weeks before, months before that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the way it's written now, the forester, if he inspects a property and notices a diseased tree, he is to, or a nuisance tree, he is to report that to the city council. They are the ones that would determine that, yes, it does meet the expectations of the guidelines of a diseased tree, and then that letter will be sent out after that time. So it's not necessarily immediate, like the next day, because we would have to be waiting until the next council meeting.
If I can move on to another question I have. Do you know what the dates of these ordinances are for these other cities? Because I think it's interesting that they've all been adopted, but there's been no action taken. So are they all very brand new and if there hasn't been time? Or, I mean, I'm just not clear how common this issue is, and are people like not taking their trees down if they look dead?
Yeah,
You know, the purpose ultimately for this.
Yeah, good question, Acting Chair. But I can't, I don't believe that we're in a position to clarify when other communities created those
adopted
ordinances and stuff. Our Forester Mr. Melhorn did make direct contact with representatives from those communities to just reaffirm how they are actively participating in enforcing the ordinance. And it appears to be similar in numerous other situations. It's a tool that's in place. If they, at this point, they haven't determined that it's one that they're ready to fully execute in that stuff. And that's where I think that we're at as an organization, I can say from city staff, as we come to those places and can recognize the financial hardship that some of that, those trees where if there's even one tree at, like we've talked about, at over $3,000, that can be a thing. And we're happy to fully execute the code as adopted, but with the increasing quantity now that, EAB has been in the area for some time, and we're really starting to see those effects of those untreated trees or trees that were not previously removed. The quantities of those in those private areas are going to significantly increase. So I see not only Oakdale, but other communities, having to, will probably be adjusting some of that practice, should that, be in their purview or decision that they want to do. But.
So is the city forester or crew monitoring the trees in Oakdale so that that they will be notified? Or I would think that's kind of a hard task to go through the entire city looking for. So is it also then neighbors can also call in? I guess I'm a little vague as far as what the complaint is. Is it primarily just the city forester, or is it anybody can file a complaint?
Well, anybody can file a complaint with, the city notifying of it, whether it's in a public space or not. Mr. Melhorn and his team have a very good grasp of where remaining ash trees are on city property or in our right-of-ways, but we do not inventory trees on private property. So those would be, could be complaint-driven, could be, per the city code now, we could, be tasked with, if directed, to do a required inspection of them all. There's some concerns about, staff, the timing that would take and the logistics of tracking all that if we start going down different directions. But I think that's feedback that the council's looking for from you guys of what, what do you as the tree board think is a reasonable direction to go moving forward as again, for consideration as they decide if it warrants an amendment to our current code as adopted.
It seems to me that there would be not capacity for our crew to inspect every tree that could come in as a complaint. When I think about even in our parks, I don't know if all of the nature center, anything that's near a walkway has been removed yet. And so just the capacity of having Tim and/or the crew members go out and inspect all those, it's got to take an hour or some time. So is there a possibility of having an inspection by Rainbow Tree Care or some other reputable company come in and do an inspection, or will it have to be one of our employees?
Yeah, I think that, the council can ultimately provide that direction, per city code. It's related to staff that are required to do that. And that's similar to other communities.
Okay.
A traditional civilian is not permitted to access backyard properties and stuff like that. But for various inspection reasons, there's, those city codes and ours do permit city staff
Okay.
to do that stuff. And if it's directed that that's what the council wants, we'll figure out a way to make it work.
Okay.
Make some adjustments to some other things that, obviously recognizing that we're still working to abate, the last, I'd say the last phases of our ones that are there, but ultimately, reassure you that from a public works standpoint and organization, based on the council's direction, that we would do that. But we're also confident that the council recognizes the amount of effort that can take in staff time, and will be acknowledging of that and develop a plan that with us that recognizes that.
Do tree removal companies have, like in Woodbury's case, a deferred plan so that when they contract with people to remove it, especially if it's like 3 or 4 trees or something, do they kind of have a pay-as-you-go kind of plan or something of that nature? That, I mean, these are pretty expensive prices for some people, so that I would think that we might want to have something where we either can defer payments or set up some kind of assistance, but I guess that's more of the city council's, whether the budget could sustain something of that nature.
And I can't speak for, nor would it be appropriate for me to speak for the private side of that, but I think, Commissioner, what you're getting at is information that the council's seeking, thoughts from this commission on if you feel that because of what those costs would be, it is appropriate to consider some sort of a assessment process similar to what we do with our street reconstruction stuff, things like that, that would be, certainly could alleviate some of those costs. And by no means is that the city's, ultimately assuming those costs, but we're just, supporting and helping the property owners for the greater good of, what's the public safety standpoint, whether it's your property or your neighbor's property or whatever.
I assume you're talking about something like the program the city council had set up for arranging loans with a local bank? That was under a reduced interest rate?
Yeah, very similar to, not specific where we would set up a loan for each property for that stuff, but through like a street reconstruction project, we assume through the budget process, we plan and finance that project initially, and then those assessments for the percentage of, frontage that you have, each property gets assessed an amount, and that's deferred over an X amount of years, and that's where, certainly could continue to do that and just ensure that that's a part of this process. So, but there again, that would be in a process where the city would ultimately be the ones that would coordinate the removal and stuff like that. It still allows the property owner and would encourage them where they can to abate that on their own with that. But if it comes to the fact that, for numerous reasons, which could be financial or, a variety of different things that each and every one of us can face, that how do we, is it appropriate that the council allows that assessment to be paid out over a period of time so that, one, the property owner can become in compliance of the city code, but yet do it in a way that not only promotes public safety for the numerous different avenues we've already discussed, but also doesn't intentionally put an undue hardship on that property owner. We're obviously a tree city community and appreciate the forest canopy that we have and want to continue to promote that, not defer somebody, from removing it, not wanting to replant. And how can we do that for them in a way that wants them to continue to replace those trees and take care of those trees in a way that does ensure safety for others.
Well, if I can take a quick summary of, I think, our input here is, at least on my notes, 3 things that it sounds like we maybe have an agreement or at least some concern about is the 20-day time limit, to maybe extend that a bit in whatever way that makes sense. The inspection process, making sure maybe we have a contracted inspectors or something if needed to support the staff, and then the repayment process, like perhaps, excuse me, treating it like an assessment or something to allow people to go get their own loans or find their own financing. I think just those would be, make it a lot easier for people to, follow the code and be safe and do the right thing, so.
So just to seek additional clarification, if I can, Acting Chairs, for the delay in the reference on the 20 days, there's, in my view, there's 2 parts to that. So we have the existing code that says 20 days, but was discussion on if they have a plan in place.
Right.
So sticking with the 20 days, but potentially providing some latitude as long as there's an executed agreement or something that it will be terminated or, taken care of in an amount of time. Are you leaving that window open, or are you leaving, is there interest in stating, you have to have it removed or have a plan to have it removed within the 20 days that has to be submitted, but what does that end potentially look like? Is there any feedback related to that
Well,
from the
my
commission?
understanding would be to the 20 days, you have a plan, or it's done, or you have a plan in writing that it's done, and you can submit that to the council.
If let me clarify, are we looking at, that could be like another 30 days? Or are we looking at, what if somebody, just a hypothetical, they say, well, it's going to be 6 months before they can get here?
Oh.
Does that seem, a cap at that? It needs to be within a certain time based off of their vendor, or if they still don't meet it within that time, then the city would
Yeah.
remove that. Are you
Yeah.
following where I'm going with that? Just seeking some clarification on that
Yeah.
to pass that to the council.
20 days plus 20 days, that's kind of my thought.
I think you got to leave it more open than that.
It's,
Because, like I said, if we have bad weather, that's going to set all those tree companies back.
a storm.
And if you were scheduled for 20 days out, but all of a sudden they lost 5 days of work, you're back in there.
Sure.
And I don't know if this is valid or not, but I've been told that after an ash tree dies, you basically have 6 years until it gets to be dangerous, when it starts coming down. So, I'm not, too set on, if they go beyond it a little bit, it's gonna cause harm, so.
So do you have a thought on where you were, thinking on what that end term might look like for somebody to state that they have, some sort of guidance that we can, give for
I
the council
would say
for
6
commission?
months is too long, because
Okay.
if anybody's out 6 months, there's other reputable companies that are probably available to do
Okay.
it.
Okay,
I just think in the 20 days, it's a little tight, but
It would certainly be within your purview to suggest to the homeowner that maybe they need a different vendor at that point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe go what I think it was said before, add an additional 20 days on, so now you've got 40 days total. But you've already, as you stated, once the city forester notifies them, there's still a time period between that time and when they get the final letter that starts the 20 days. So they got quite a bit of time.
so if I'm understanding correctly, at least from what you're stating, Commissioner, is that, maintain the existing 20-day timeline for required abatement. If within that timeline, they would have to provide documentation that they have an executed contract potentially with a private company. If they do, that is extended another 20 days. If they don't, if it's not abated within that 20 days, then the city would, the suggestion would be then it would revert back to the city forester, could coordinate that that removal and abatement.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay, certainly good information, and I'm sure the council will appreciate and take into consideration as they're figuring that out. And then one, on your second part that you mentioned, Acting Chair, is just about the investigation process. Is if you could clarify for me a little bit more what that looks like, you know, probably more specifically to, is that where we are, is it complaint-driven inspections, or is it where, are you suggesting that council should consider maintaining the existing process that staff start incorporating a mandatory inspection process into their?
I guess it's a workload issue, from my mind. You know, how many people on staff are certified tree inspectors? And I know, Tim, you must be, but are there other staff members that can go out and do this? So maybe it's not as big of a concern as I'm thinking it might be if you're the only one. And you have other work that has to be done. So how do you I guess you prioritize this because it's public safety and get out there, but I know there's X number of hours in the day. So, I mean, is that something we could contract another company who has certified inspectors to come if we need it?
I think that if it came to the point of a required inspection across the board, you know, certainly we'd have to look at operations and work with the administrator to decide, you know, what's the best way to move forward to meet the expectations of council. I don't know what that would look like right now.
Right.
There's a lot of different options out there, but I think that one thing that the council, one important thing that the council was looking for some feedback from the tree board on for their consideration in this is it appropriate to continue as written where it is, you know, inspections could be done at the discretion of the council and as obviously staff or that's available, or is there interest in being a complaint-based inspection? You know, certainly two very distinctly different situations there, so.
I think you're already on complaint-based from the document.
Right.
And I think all she was suggesting was if it gets to the point where there are too many trees to be inspected for one person to carry on, consider the option for the city council to give you the option to hire staff from, services from existing companies.
Yeah,
I
so
think that's what she's meaning.
just to clarify, right now, city code is not complaint-driven. Our Oakdale city code, numerous, not to be confused with the code of other communities and what they're actually doing with that, where they have a code, these other communities that we referenced that state that foresters shall inspect, they're stating that they don't go and do the inspection unless it's complaint-based driven. Our code states that the forester authorized agent, if we have reason to believe that there is a nuisance on a property, then we would go inspect.
That actually sounds better to me, too.
Yeah. Because, you know, we're basically talking about emerald ash borer, but if it's oak wilt or two-line chestnut borer, those take a long time before they start showing up. So I don't think I would want to spend my tax dollars hiring some company to come around and inspect trees just to see if they're diseased. I think we should keep it as it is. Keep it as the code is now.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's good information, and we can, we'll definitely take to the council for their consideration as we evaluate this, our existing code and the appropriateness of it as adopted moving forward.
And I appreciate your comment about complaint-driven. I think our code is a better choice on that.
Yeah, good feedback. Thank you for that. So, I don't, certainly happy to answer any other questions that you might have or field any more comments that we can share with the.
I have one more. Authorized agent, would that be, when it says city forester or authorized agent twice in here, would that be like a certified inspector?
Yeah.
Tree
yep,
inspector? Okay.
Yep.
Can we just change the wording in there? I think authorized agent isn't very clear.
We can look into it. It might be through a definition in an earlier aspect of the
Somewhere?
overall city code, because that
Okay.
could be, you know, I would have to reaffirm, but
right.
I'll certainly take that into
Okay.
consideration.
I
for
think that would help for me to understand, be clear about it, is who's an authorized agent to state that. Thanks. All right, and then it sounded like we were all maybe in agreement about the repayment process. We need to make sure people have time to deal with this financially. And the city, you know, can help us to do that as private citizens.
Certainly. So
Yeah.
you would encourage the council
Yeah,
to
to consider,
consider that,
yes.
some form of,
It just makes sense. It's what we
assessment.
do with the streets, you know, so,
okay, good feedback.
okay,
Happy to take that back to the council.
all right. All right, anything else on that discussion? Thank you for your input, everybody. Let's move on the agenda to, excuse me, other updates. This is our staff liaison. What's happening?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Melhorn, our
Thank
city
you.
forester, for
Tim?
some updates.
Yeah, so the city forestry department is considering not renewing our treatment contract for ash trees. We are getting caught up with our EAB management on our public spaces. We are currently researching a grant for removing and replacing diseased and hazardous trees in public spaces.
If I might make a comment, if you use the other mic, that mic has a problem and shouldn't be used. There's a yellow tag there.
Maybe start over, Tim, you did cut out. Thanks.
The forestry department is considering not renewing our treatment contract for ash trees. We are currently getting caught up with our removal and replacing our diseased trees in public spaces. We are also researching a possible grant for removing and replacing diseased and hazardous trees in public spaces. And treating the terminally ill is expensive and not very cost effective, which I also recently was affirmed by at a training I attended. Forestry staff has also been working hard on the abatement of other nuisance trees throughout the city. And then specifically for the Pete Grasky Arbor Day tree giveaway, the check-in list, based on your feedback, we will provide an alphabetical list by last name.
Good.
And that's it.
Just a reminder to everybody that the locations changed this year for the tree giveaway, so if you're watching on TV, don't come to Walton Park. It's going to be at the fire station, the North Fire Station, and a drive-through like we've had,
Correct.
rain or shine.
The firemen didn't even know that
Yeah, oh,
in that station.
well, hopefully they'll know it by the giveaway day, so.
So in the registration, is there, you know, kind of a like, please note kind of a thing, so it's quite clear in the registration that this has been moved, so you go to this site and such?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And April 1st is the sign-up start, right? 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm guessing?
Correct.
April.
I can't confirm on the actual timeline of when that'll start, but yeah, that is. And then our staff this year, one thing we've changed a little bit is working together collaboratively with our communications department and then our public works admin to reaffirm with those that did sign up for a tree, to remind them as it gets closer that here's that you did sign up for this, it's upcoming on this date, here's the date that you should arrive. So hopefully that, obviously had some feedback from last year that there's some people that maybe forgot about the event at all, which is easy to do, and then maybe forgot about what time they had to show up, so they just showed up, and so we'll put some extra effort into that this year to help try to communicate with people, and obviously during that process, we'll make sure that they're aware of, you know, the location at the North Fire Station.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, that was discussed last meeting that, yeah, if a follow-up would really appreciate, especially since the site's being changed.
Great.
And we do seem to, at least the last couple of years, gotten a lot of no-shows, so that would help.
Yep, yeah, we have a plan in place for that this year. We'll hopefully address that, and staff have already discussed a post-after action review just to see what worked and what didn't, and hopefully continue to, every year, make finite adjustments and do the best that we can for that. But hopefully, to clarify for those members of the commission and that stuff that are looking to attend that and participate into that, we'd ask you to arrive about 15 minutes early to get set up, and we'll get you into your, the workstation areas and tasks. So that way, once people do arrive, we hopefully don't get behind right from the start. So.
I'd like to take this opportunity to just officially thank the city of Oakdale for doing this. This is a really nice deal. Not a lot of communities, we are a Tree City USA city. We have recognition for that. And I just so appreciate that the city does this. And the people that come through are just so grateful. So I want to just formally say thank you for
Yes.
doing this.
Certainly an event that staff appreciates, and it's nice to, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's, as you mentioned, it's for the right reasons, and so we're happy to support that and be a part of that.
And the people who come through are impressed. The trees are lovely and nice size specimens. So I think it's a nice investment back into the community by council to keep approving this expenditure every year. So please pass that on to council for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else, Tim? No. Wrap it up? Okay, well, thanks. So that'll be our next big event coming up. So we'll move on then on the agenda to board member updates. Is there anything from the board that people
I
would like to
stopped
bring up?
out at the Nature Center and got the updated tree trek, and I want to make sure that Laura Linsmeyer gets a lot of credit, because she's the one that put all this together. So this is the new one. It's quite a bit easier to read than the last one, so.
Excellent. We don't need a microscope to read the font. Excellent, thanks for bringing this. So it's all done. It's as updated as we can make it right now. And Mike, thank you for your work. You've done a lot of
Well, like I
walking out
said,
there.
Laura also did
I
a
know,
lot
and
of
Laura
work
for
too,
making
so,
us a great map.
yeah.
And hopefully these maps are now out and by the front door
They
of
are.
the Discovery Center? Yay.
I picked it right off the shelf.
Excellent, excellent. So, and then it's on a little bigger paper, I think, so legal size, so that helps. Thank you. So stop out at the Discovery Center and pick up a tree trek map and take a walk. Learn about trees. Anything else from the board members? No? Dallas?
Nope.
All right, then we move to council liaison.
Good evening, commissioners. First, I want to thank you for your very thoughtful feedback on the, Chapter 22, Article 6. It was really interesting to listen to you. I know Corey took all of the notes and will send back to us, so thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Wanted to just, it wasn't part of my notes originally, but earlier today, Oakdale did share the tree giveaway on Facebook, and it does say note new location, and that set an alarm for Tuesday, April 1st at 8 a.m. to reserve your free tree. So April 1st indeed. I knew I saw it earlier when I was scrolling, so I pulled it back up while you guys were talking. We have been busy in the council, and I understand that they keep saying it's not usually like this, Councilmember Moore. It's not usually like this, but it's been busy. We have spent a lot of time talking about the park system plan update and the pedestrian and bike plan update. And so there's been some really healthy discussion with how we move forward, how we look forward, and how we prioritize some of these. So it's been kind of exciting. And we've been watching the Public Works building going up, which is incredibly satisfying, right, to check in on those pictures every once in a while. So that is all I had as far as council updates. I am happy to answer any questions. And Corey, I just want to thank you for your facilitation of that discussion. So thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
When does the public service building open? Is that this fall yet?
This fall.
October to November of
Okay,
2025.
it is this fall. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good luck with that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your time, commissioners.
Thank you. You're welcome. All right. I think that's it. We move on to adjournment. I need a motion to,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Enjoy our spring, I think,
For a day.
till tomorrow.
Delayed